Blog Talk Radio.
Michiamo, Medinde, Odwirafo, Kwesi, Nehem, Ptah, Akan, Akwamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, Odwirafo. That means greetings to all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning Africans, black people. Eneye, EGUA, that means today is Marketplace Day. My name is Odwirafo, Kwesi, Nehem, Ptah, Akan, the Odwirafo of the Akwamuman, Amaruka, Atifi, the Akwamu Nation in North America. So today we want to address some of our free services. And what we're going to do is, hold on one second. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to talk about our AKUMA TRA, AKUMA DINE, and AKUMA TRA. AKUMA TRA deals with substance abuse abstinence in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. AKUMA DINE deals with domestic abuse neutralization in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African community, black community. AKUMA TRA deals with trauma, recovery, alignment, overcoming transcarnational trauma in the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. So we opened up the chat. If you would like to comment in the chat, you have to log in. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat. We're going to be looking at our documents. I'm going to put the links up for those who are in the chat room. For those who are not, but you're following along, you can look at the AKUMA TRA page, odwirafo.com, ODWIRAF as in free, o.com/AKUMA, AKUMATRA.html. You can find the links on that page to all of the AKUMA pages. We have 3 of them, as we said, and each page has a link within the page to the KUM method, the ritual method to overcome substance abuse, a ritual method to overcome domestic abuse and the negative effects of domestic abuse, a ritual method to overcome transcarnational trauma. So that link is, all the links you can find on that page, including the link to the article that we're going to go over first. And let me just make sure. Let me send a message out first. I just want to send out one particular message, let some of the people who have contacted us, let them know that we are on, and then we can get started. The name of the article, in the meantime, that you can check out, it is the article, you can get it directly from that link, the AKUMA TRA link, AMANEHUNU, Overcoming Transcarnational Suffering. So that's the link. You can find it. You can find that on the regular Odwirafo page, but also the AKUMA TRA, AKUMA, AKUMA TRA, AKUMA TRA, all one word, .html page on the website. Okay, so I want to send out this message right quick to let the people who contacted us know that we're broadcasting, and then we'll get started. But you can download that link now. Also, in the meantime, we do, with regard to our schedule, next Saturday, July 5th, we will be in Hartford, Connecticut, doing a presentation there. That information is on the website. And on July 19th, we will be in Las Vegas, Nevada. We will be posting the details of that particular event coming up. We're also working on an event for July 12th as well as possibly this weekend, so keep up with the website. The event this weekend may be in D.C. or maybe in Baltimore, so we'll give you that information by tomorrow. We'll have everything locked down by tomorrow, so just keep up with the website with regard to that. All right, I just sending out the message, and then we'll get started. And you can post your questions now. in the chat room on any of this information. And also, if you want to make a comment or you have a question and you're online, you're on the phone, just press number 1, which will raise your hand basically, and then we can answer your questions. We'll be able to see who's trying to contact us, and we can ask you, if you can pick up the phone, or we can pick up the phone and contact you. All right, so what we're going to do right now, we're going to do something a little bit different. This document, AMANEHUNU, Overcoming Transcarnational Suffering, we want to go through that. It's a good day to have this information on AKUA or AWUKU Wednesday for the EGUA show. Of course, the EGUA show deals with the marketplace. We've had a number of individuals who we interviewed who talked about their businesses, their organizations, the kind of information that they're giving to the community, the services they provide to the community. We had a naturopath on, Dr. Atifi. We had an educator on, Dr. Iya. We had a publisher and author, as well as a brother who has his own live broadcast on Sundays, Kamal Makesi Tahuti, on previous shows. So we're through the marketplace show, we want to highlight individuals in the community, individuals and or organizations, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African people, who are providing goods and services to the community and also share the values of ancestral culture, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral culture. So this is what we've been doing on a weekly basis. We do it on AWUKU or AKUA, which is the male and female terms for Wednesday in Akan culture, AKUA or the day da of Akua, and AWUKU the day or da of AWUKU. We're talking about the Abosom, meaning the deities in the Akan tradition, the Abosom, AWUKU, and Akua. AWUKU and Akua in Akan culture are the same deities as Set and Nebuchadnezzar in ancient Kemet. They are also called Eshu, or Alagbara, or Alegba, and Agb, the wife of Eshu in the Yoruba tradition. They are called Legba and Koni in the Vodun tradition. They deal with exchange. Kweku Anansi, who's also, that's another title of AWUKU, he's a communicator. He's also a trickster, communicator, and he deals with medium or media of exchange. He's also called Ekusika, which has to do with the exchange of money, the exchange of value for goods, services, and so forth. But he's also a communicator, the communicator between the Supreme Being, Amenet, Amen, or Inyamewa, Inyame, as we say in Akan, the Great Mother and Great Father, the Abosom, the deities, the Nanasom, Nsamanfo, the honored ancestresses and ancestors, and to us. So we give our projections, our communications, our ritual prayers, and he is a force in creation that carries those vibrations, those projections, those ritual prayers from us, from the physical world to the spirit realm, and carries their messages back to us. He is shown as a spider. Anansi means spider. He's Anansi Kokroko, the great spider. Just like a spider can weave a web of, a web in a window, at a windowsill, and then fill up the entire empty space of the window. And now he can navigate all the various rows of the web in that previously empty space, and he becomes the owner of that space. Anansi Kokroko, Akweku Anansi, or Awuku, Nana Awuku, the Abosom Awuku. He weaves a web of Tumi, which in Akan is spiritual power, Ashe in the Yoruba tradition. He weaves a web of Tumi that permeates the black substance of space. And each one of us is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people connected to our head region, where our spiritual brain, our nkra, resides in the head region, our Ka'et, our soul, our divine consciousness. The Ka and the Ka'et are called nkra and nkrawa in Akan, male and female versions of that, names for that. Every one of us as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people are on the web of energy woven throughout creation, and one of those points of the web is connected to our nkra, our divine consciousness. So we have a direct energetic link from our head, our divine consciousness, to the great consciousness of Nyamewa, Nyame, or Amenet, and Amen. That web of energy is governed by the Anansi Kokroko, the great spider, Nana Awuku, the communicator, who carries that energy back and forth. The World Wide Web, of course, is the internet, but the World Wide Web in your body is your nervous system. And the electric impulses are carried back and forth throughout the various parts of your body by the nervous system. That World Wide Web, that nervous system is governed by Awuku. He's the communicator, and that's the communicative faculty physically within the body. Spiritually, you also have a communicative faculty, and Awuku governs that. And the same thing in the great divine body of Amen and Amenet, the divine nervous system, worldwide web within the great divine body that touches every created entity. Awuku governs that web system. Akua, who is called Nebet-Het, also called Agberu in Yoruba. Akua, she's a courieress. You'll see that her headdress in ancient Kemet is you'll see that she has the bowl, the basin, the neb or nebet on her head. It carries the offering. It carries the offerings just like her husband, Awuku, carries the messages, the prayers, the invocations back and forth from the physical world to the spirit realm. Akua, or Nebet-Het, she's the courieress, a divine courier or courieress. She carries the offerings, the sacrifices that we make from us to the ancestresses and ancestors, and Nanasom and Samafo. She carries them to the Abosom, the deities. Abosom is the Akan term for deities. Orisha is the Yoruba term. Odu is the Fon and Eve term. Toro, sometimes called Neteru and Netertu, but Torotu in ancient Kemet and Kanit, Nubia, are the term for the divinities, the forces in nature, the children of the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father. She carries the offerings that we make, the sacrifices, so that we can realign ourselves with order. This is why she has the bowl on her head. In fact, the term Akua, one of the variations of her name, is Kukua, which means an earthen vessel. So she's the one that carries that vessel. In the Yoruba tradition, the wife of Eshu is Agberu, and that name literally means the load bearer, because she carries the load on her head. So she's the courieress, carries that value back and forth between the spirit world and the physical world. Awuku, or Kwekwanasi, he carries the communications between the spirit world and the physical world. These are media of exchange. And when we deal with the marketplace, we're talking about exchange. And this is Wednesday, the day of Awuku, the day of Akua, the planet Awuku, the planet Akua, which is Mercury. It's the messenger planet that comes directly from us. Has nothing to do, of course, with the Romans and so forth. That planet was governed by Set in ancient Kemet, still governed by Awuku, or Kweku Anan Set in Akan, governed by Eshu, or Esu, Sut, or Set from ancient Kemet. Same divinity and same function. So this is dealing with media of exchange, exchanging ideas, exchanging information, exchanging value within the community based on our ancestral value. So it's fitting to have this particular subject because these are free services to the community. AKUMA TRA, AKUMA DAI, AKUMA TRA. These are free services that we offer to the community. We have within our culture, within our ancestral culture, our amambre, the way of the nation, our culture, everything we need to overcome all problems, all issues, all negativity. We don't need to reach outside of our culture to solve our problem. That's any problem. It's not like we can do certain cultural things with, art and music and dance and so forth, but as soon as we have a problem, whether it's a physical problem, an illness, or a mental illness, or some problem dealing with, engineering or anything else, then all of a sudden we have to leave our community, leave our culture to get answers to questions and get, situations rebalanced. That's not true. We have everything we need within our culture to overcome all obstacles and restore balance to ourselves and move forward. So that includes issues such as substance abuse issues, domestic abuse issues, trauma issues, intergenerational trauma, transcarnational trauma. So through ritual processes based on Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion. When we talk about Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, of course we have the Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa, where we prove conclusively that the term Afuraka, meaning the Ka, land of Afura, land of the Creator, the Kait of Afurait, the land of the Creatress. We prove that that's what that means. And Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, of course, are children of Afura, Afurayat, titles of Ra and Rayat, children of the divine land, the Creator and Creatress, and so forth. So within our ancestral religious practices, rooted in our ancient ancestral religion, going back tens of thousands of years to ancient Kanat, which is a title of Nubia, later ancient Kamet, which is a title of, quote unquote, one of the major titles of what is now misnomer Egypt. We migrated away from the Hapi River region, migrated west, south, east, and north. Thousands of years ago, we carried our culture with us. We carried our language with us. We reestablished civilizations in West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, Central, South, North, Northwest, East, and so forth. We continue to practice our culture under the forms of the Akan tradition, Yoruba tradition, Mende tradition, Igbo tradition, Fang tradition, Lobi tradition, and so forth. We're the same people. We were these same groups when we were living in ancient Kanat and Kemet, Nubian Egypt. We migrated away after the invasion, some before the invasion of the whites and their offspring, some afterwards. We reestablished the same culture. The languages are genetically related. We are literally genetically related to the people of ancient Kemet. Of course, the genetic studies on mummies from ancient Kemet have found that they have the Y chromosomal DNA that 50 to 75% of all black people in America have. So once we migrated to the western part of the continent and central and south and reestablished civilization for thousands of years, then some of us were snatched away from that region and taken directly to America, North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Kwesi, the enslavement era, and this is how we got here, of course. So, but we're showing that there's a genetic link, there's a direct migratory pattern from the Nile Valley or the Hapi Valley region to the western part of the continent, south, central, and so forth, a cultural migratory pattern, a genetic pattern that's apparent, also a linguistic pattern, the same language. If you look at a hieroglyphic dictionary on the Medutun Toro, so-called hieroglyphics, and you take a tree dictionary of the Akan people, or Yoruba dictionary, or Chiluba dictionary, or Igbo dictionary, or a Fang dictionary, and so forth, you'll find the same words, the same concepts, multi-tiered, multifaceted definitions intact for these various words, the same names of divinities, same ritual colors, same functions in creation, and so forth. So our various expressions of ancestral religion are fundamentally, cosmologically, of course, they are sound and they're unified. We just have different expressions of the same practice because we are the same people wherever we have traveled. So that's key. So when we talk about Nanasom, that is just a catch-all title for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion across the board, no matter what expression it takes, Yoruba, Akan, Ewe, Gogun, whatever it is. So we just use that term, Nanasom, and we have a page on our website, Nanasom, that deals with that, goes into detail about the etymological origin of that term and how we coined that term as ancestrally derived from ancient Kemet. It can be found in other languages on the continent, their derivatives. Through Nanasom, through our Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral culture, we have the tools ritually to overcome substance abuse issues, to overcome domestic abuse issues, those negative spirits, negative conditionings that prompt a person to continue to be drawn to the same kind of low vibrational, corrupt individuals and or entities that push people into these domestic violence situations, domestic abuse situations, and trap them to a certain extent if we are not conscious, and if we're not strong, trap us into staying into these situations and being drawn into these situations. We have the capacity to overcome that. We just have to be shown that we have that capacity and how to activate that capacity. So whether it's substance abuse, abusing drugs, alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, these various things, domestic abuse, as well as intergenerational trauma and transcarnational trauma. So we're going to start off dealing with we're going to look at the article. So we're going to read through this article. We want you to get the information because some people are on the phone. Some people may not have the article. It's a short article, but we want to go through that information, and we want to read through it so you can get a gist of what the foundation of this particular, of our services, the free services we provide with the community based on our ritual method to overcome these issues. We've had numerous people who overcome alcohol issues, overcome marijuana issues, overcome other drug issues by embracing Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral religion, their own ancestral religion, which is based on your ancestresses and ancestors of your blood circle that reach back not only recent generations, but thousands of years. You're descended from ancestresses and ancestors who were the first people to walk the earth. You have a direct blood descent of people who established civilization, maintained civilization, brought civilization to different parts of the continent and carried it wherever we migrated in or were forced to migrate into in the world. We have divinities that we are born under, forces in nature who affect our temperament, who are connected to our our soul, our divine consciousness. We have Abosom, Orisha, Vodou, who are connected to our divine soul, our consciousness, our Ka and Kaet. And that affects our temperament, the way we function in the world. It encodes what kind of function we are to execute in creation. And it shows when we get out of alignment with that function, how to restore balance to our lives. When we're talking about these various issues, whether it's substance abuse, domestic abuse, suffering from domestic abuse, or intergenerational trauma, or generational trauma, or intergenerational trauma, or transcarnational trauma, we're talking about disalignment fundamentally from the Nkra, from the Nkrawa, the soul, the divine consciousness. Now, in ancient Kemet, the soul is called Ka, that's the male version, Kaet, the female version, and as we said in Akan, Nkra, the male version, the soul, divine consciousness, Nkra or Nkrawa, the female version. The Ka or the Kaet is a soul, it's a divinity. It's an Abosom, it is an Orisha, it is a Vodou, it is an Ntoro or Ntorot, so-called Neter or Netert. It is an actual deity that was assigned to you pre-incarnation. Of course, this is only for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. No other people have a Ka or a Kaet, a Kra or a Krawa. No pseudo-Native Americans who are just Asians who migrated, no Asians, no Arabs, no Hindus, no white Americans, no white Europeans, no white Hispanics, no white Latinas or Latinos. None of them have a Ka or Kaet. They are spirits of disorder. They incarnate that way. Only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African people, black people have a Ka or Kaet. A Ka or Kaet is a deity. It is not Bosom and Orisha Vodou. That is assigned to us pre-incarnation by Amen and Amenet, or Nyame, Nyamewa. That deity is assigned to us. It dwells within the head region. It is that force in the head region that draws us always towards harmony with divine order. When we go against that pull, that force in our head that is pulling us towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order, when we go against that, we become disaligned from our Kra. We become detached to a certain extent, and sometimes the Kra will detach. Now we're going in a different direction. And when you're out of alignment with that divinity that dwells within your head region, that personal Abosom, then you create problems for yourself. So, and also, we have a book on this force in nature, this divinity. It's called the Okra complex, the soul of Akan. We talk about the nature and function of the soul, and we show that it's seated physically within the brain region, Just like there's a fourfold division of the brain, major division, right and left hemispheres of the cerebrum, right and left hemispheres of the cerebellum. You also have encoded within the spiritual brain, which is your nkra. Just like you have a body, and then you have a smaller body within your body in the head region. That smaller body is the brain, and it regulates the functions, all of the functions in the larger body. You have a spirit body, and you have a smaller body within that spirit body, which is called the spirit's brain, or the nkra, the soul, the ka, the kaet, a divinity, a force dwelling in the head region. And it regulates all the functions within the spirit body. Encoded within your nkra, your krawa, is your divine function, what function you came to execute in the world. As Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, just like plant life, animal life, mineral life, we as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people are human beings. We're the only true human being because we have a nkra. That's what defines a human being. Having a nkra, a soul, divine consciousness. We are cells within the great divine body of Amen and Amenet. Just like your cells are entities that dwell within your body, that make up your body, and they are children of the organs and systems of which they are a part. So your liver cells serve the liver organ or the liver deity. And when they serve that liver deity, their parent deity, they're also serving the whole body, you, at the same time. We are cells within the great divine body of Amen and Amenet. Nyame, Nyamewa. The organs within the great divine body are the smaller bodies that regulate order within the great divine body. Those organs are the deity, the Aboson, the Orisha, the Bodu, the Ntorotu, the Arusi, as they call them in Igbo. The cells within the organs are us, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, plant life, animal life, mineral life. We are the cells within those organs. When we serve the divinities that govern us, we're also serving the great divine king at the same time, the great mother and great father who function together as a unit. Always have. There's never been a time when there was just Amenet. There was never a time when there was just Amen. They function together as two halves of the divine whole. Now, encoded within your nkra, your spirit's brain, just like your physical brain has all the programs, the blueprint of how everything is going to work, within your spirit's brain, encoded within that is your function to execute within the divine body, within the body of the supreme being. Are you an immune system cell within the great divine body? Then you'll be naturally inclined and pulled within your head to execute immune system functions. You'll be a protector. You may engage in military functions or police-type functions in a traditional Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community. Are you a person who is connected to the renal system within the great divine body? It's like you have a renal system, your kidneys, the renal system, the excretory system, that balances, governs fluid balance in the body, electrolyte balance in the body, these various different functions, cleansing and things like that. You might be a cell within the great divine renal system, meaning you would be a child of Akua, Akberu, Nebethet, because she governs the kidneys, she governs the renal system within the great divine body. She also governs your renal system as an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit person, the excretory system, the renal system. So just like there's a fluid balance that's governed by Nebethet in the body, an electrolyte balance or mineral balance that's governed within the divine body, a cleansing process, an excretory function within your body. The same thing happens with the great divine body. So if you were a cell of the divine renal system, meaning you are a child of Akua, you would try to bring balance to situations. You'll be naturally attracted to bringing balance to specific situations. In certain kinds of healing, you'll be drawn to healing as a healer or a healeress in a certain capacity because you happen to be one of the cells of the divine renal system or a child of Nana Akua or Nebehet or Akberu. So everybody who is Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit comes into the world with a function to execute, just like every cell in your body has a function to execute. Encoded within your nkra is that function. Encoded within your soul is that function. It's given to you by the Supreme Being before you incarnate into the womb. So, now that you have a basic understanding of the nkra, the the soul, the divine consciousness, and the fact that it's encoded with the information you need to execute your function in the world harmoniously, and you experience that initially as a strong pull within your head towards certain thoughts, intentions, and actions, and a repulsion from other thoughts, intentions, and actions. It governs the way you function. It pulls you away from things that are not in harmony with your function and draws you towards things, objects, deeds, and entities that are in harmony. So we're going to look at this document because that's key to this document and what this document is talking about. The document is AMANEHUNU, Overcoming Transcarnational Suffering, and this is what we're going to deal with. Now, and by the way, if you have a question, again, you can type it in the chat room, or you can raise your hand in the call queue. All right, so this document, AMANEHUNU, Overcoming Transcarnational Suffering, we say at first, in our Akan term, this is my Akan term for suffering or affliction is AMANEHUNU. It is important to note that AMANEHUNU is not encoded within our nkra, soul, the divine consciousness. That's part of our nkrabea, or nkra, which is the male and female terms for our divine functions that we're given to execute in the world by Nyame or Amanet, Amen, the Supreme Being. So you have a function, say you're an immune system cell, that's your natural function. So you're naturally drawn to restore order where disorder has occurred, to protect, to defend, to take on that offensive power and remove obstacles to functioning in harmony with divine order for yourself and for the community. Just like the immune system cells, they seek out the cancerous cells, attack them, destroy them, and expel them from the body. You will be operating in the divine body of the Supreme Being in the community. You'll be naturally drawn to seek out disorder and those purveyors of disorder and neutralize them or eradicate them so that the community can still function. You will root out the criminals, root out the pedophiles, root out the molesters, root out the rapists, all various forms of criminality, remove those cancers from the community, eradicate them, exterminate them, so that the integrity of the community can be maintained and harmony can continue to be maintained in the community. You might be an immune system cell and you're naturally drawn to that. That's your function. That's your nkra and nkrabea. And you were given or assigned to certain forces in creation through your ancestry that give you the power to execute that function. If you are given that function by the Supreme Being, then you assign certain abosom or divinities that carry that fiery kind of energy so that you can execute that function. You wouldn't be assigned to a cool, watery divinity that's about nurturing and healing. You'll be assigned to a fiery divinity or some other divinity that's about divine hate, divine destruction. Of course, we have the publication in Maranechi, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate. Love and hate are two halves of the divine whole, which is divine order. So we have an entire book on that subject. Okay, so what we're saying is AMANEHUNU, or suffering, is not encoded within our our soul, our divine consciousness. Your soul is pure, is divine. It is a deity. It is an embodiment of divine order. It cannot be soiled. It does not embrace disorder. It cannot be polluted with disorder. Your nkra is a fourth in creation. It's a divinity. It does not dwell in disorder. If you decide you want to engage in disorder, criminality, evil, disordered actions, and you're going to continue to dwell in that, you will repel your nkra. It will disengage from you. It's a deity. It will return to Amen and Amenet in the spirit realm and leave you. And now you're just like a physical body without a brain. You're a spirit body without an nkra, without a soul, without a divinity that anchors you in divine order. And without that anchor, now you're like a chicken with its head cut off. You're operating in disorder. You don't have an anchor in order. This is the nature, by the way, of the whites and their offspring. They do not have a krawa, so they are spirits of disorder, and they manifest that on a daily and continuous basis. So because your nkra is divine, it's a divinity, it does not dwell in disorder. And therefore, suffering is not encoded or affliction is not encoded within your cross. It's not our destiny to suffer. Any fool is trying to tell us that God put suffering on us for a divine reason that is pure foolishness. It comes from the false traditions of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, with their fictional deities, Allah, Yahweh, Jesus. All the characters in the Bible, Quran, these are fictional characters who never existed of any race whatsoever. Again, we have the book Kukutumtum, The Ancestral Jurisdiction, and all these books we mentioned are on our website. We have a number of books, about 12 of them, about 60 articles, about 48 videos. All of that information, these books, publications, videos are all free downloads from our website. We also sell the softcover versions of 7 of them, but the ebook versions are free downloads. Kukutumtum, The Ancestral Jurisdiction, we go into detail proving that Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Yahweh, Allah, Buddha, all these characters never existed, and we show how they were manufactured by the whites and their offspring. They're not black, they're not white, they did not exist. So when people try to convince us that the suffering that we encounter, and that we're going through, that we experience, came from God, came from divinity, that's pure foolishness. It is not encoded within our kra, our krawa. It's not, suffering is not encoded. It's not something that was given to us by the Supreme Being. Suffering arises out of our disalignment from our kra, and hence our nkra and nkrabea, our divine function, which is encoded within our kra, our krawa. The blueprint that we're given, that's encoded with our physical brain and our spirit's brain, that is how we are to function. When we align with that, we function in harmony with order. When we get out of alignment with that, that's when we experience suffering. The Supreme Being did not put suffering on us. We only manifest suffering or experience that when we become out of alignment with our divine consciousness. Now, the term karma is said to be derived from kwa, Proto-Indo-European root meaning to make or to do. It also refers to the effects of our actions. This is because the term kwa is derived from ka or kra in ancient Kemet, kra or nkra in Akan. Ka not only means soul and shrine, kra, shrine, kara in ancient Kemet. Again, we have an article, Kara Kasa, the origin and nature of the chakra or kakra. We show that term comes directly from ancient Kemet. Pre-Indian culture, we already had the kakra or kara, so-called chakras in ancient Kemet. We also have an article called Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, where we show that term comes from ancient Kemet as well. But the kara means shrine, rooted in the soul in ancient Kemet. But it also means to speak. So ka means soul, nkra means shrine, but it also means to speak, debt, work, toil, labor, kat, what is to be done, made, to do, to make, and so forth. So ka or kwa, which is the root, Indo-European root of the term ma or karma, that comes directly not from Proto-Indo-European, the language, so-called positive language family, but it actually goes back to ancient Kemet before the Indo-Europeans existed. Ka, kra, meaning to speak, debt, work, toil, labor, and so forth. What is to be done, made to do, to make. Karma or krama is also kraba or nkrabea in Akhan. Our nkra and nkrabea is what we are to do, the manner in which we are to do something. Inherent within our akra is the notion of eka, which is the term for debt in Akan. So all these terms, ka meaning debt, ka meaning work or toil or labor, kra ma, our function, what we are to do, nkrabea. These terms are in our culture, in our language. It has to do with what our function in the world is, how we are to execute that function, the effects of causal actions, what is to be owed, debt, eka, and so forth. This is why the term nkrabea and Akhan is translated as fate by Europeans. But we also say, however, we have a full understanding, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people have a full understanding of nkra and nkrabea, because it is our divine function in creation, which the whites and their offspring, again, do not have. Because they have no purpose in the world, and our purpose is more properly defined as our function, they are always attempting to philosophically escape from the world such as going to heaven in the West or escaping the cycle of reincarnation in the East. This is what the whites and their offspring are always trying to engage in, philosophical escape from the world, because they have no purpose in the world, just like a cancer cell that develops in your body because you were living under radiation, and now the cell develops, becomes disfigured. It doesn't have a purpose in your body, so it's slated for destruction by the immune system. The whites and their offspring are cancerous cells within the body of black humanity. So they don't have a purpose. They came into being because of degeneration. So they are slated for elimination in the divine body. Because the whites and their offspring try to philosophically escape from the world, they have no purpose. They also endeavor to make us believe we have no purpose, and therefore we should seek escape from the world as well, while they, on the other hand, simultaneously dominate the world's resources. So we say when we come disaligned from our nkra, or krawa, through misguided thoughts, intentions, and actions, we place ourselves in disorder and will naturally experience the effects of disorder. Now, if one touches a flame, they'll get burned. If one ingests poison, they'll become ill. If one projects perverse thoughts, intentions, and engages in perverse behaviors, those disordered vibrations are received by others, living and discarnate spirits. Those individuals living and discarnate who are on the same frequency will be attracted to such perverse thoughts, intentions, and actions, and the person who projects them. You then draw disordered individuals to you. Your conscious and unconscious interaction with them engenders more disordered energy or magnetism, disordered effects, etc. We experience this as AMANEHUNU, or suffering, affliction at some point. You place yourself on the same negative frequency, the perverse, discordant emanations of energy. Every individual, animate or inanimate, is projecting electromagnetic emanations just by virtue of the fact that they exist on the planet Earth. Planet Earth, of course, has the North and South poles. There's a magnetosphere, a magnetic sphere or magnetosphere that surrounds the Earth. Our nervous system runs on electromagnetic energy. That's why you can step on a carpet or touch someone and shock them. You have electromagnetic energy circulating through your system. You have a North Pole and a South Pole as well. When you think and you project and you act, the energy that is constantly emanating from you just on a regular basis, just by virtue of the fact that you're breathing, taking in electromagnetic energy from the sun, through the air and so forth, and sending that energy throughout your body, including the electrolytes in your body that carry that kind of energy, these negative ions and so forth. When you project, when you think, when you focus, you channel your energy, you project your energy. If you get on a accordant vibration, meaning that you begin to function out of harmony with order, now you drop into projecting discordant energy, disaligned energy, perverse emanations, not harmonious emanations from you. Just like you can have some food, and if it's, fresh, there's the emanations, including the aroma, is released and it smells pleasant. If it becomes rotten, then the aroma or the emanations emerging from the food is discordant. It's disordered, and it stinks. And you know there's a problem, and you won't consume that particular food item. When we get on a lower or perverse frequency of energy, a discordant energy, then we project discordant emanations, not harmonious emanations. Those emanations affect other individuals. Just like you can stand in a bank or somewhere else and you can stare at someone, or somebody can stare at you. Staring at you, you can feel the electromagnetic emanations emanating from them. They travel through the air, across space, and hit you in the face, and you can feel that. That's not a belief, that's just electromagnetic energy. Every animate and inanimate object within the earth, within the magnetosphere, which we're all inside of, emanates electromagnetic energy. Just like you can project that, you can project thoughts, intentions, and so forth. When you focus and channel certain kinds of thoughts, or any kind of thought, intention, and action, it affects other individuals, living and deceased. If you're on a frequency of discordant energy because you're engaged in disorder, you're rejecting what your nkra is trying to pull you to do, Now you become disaligned, disordered, disruptive. And now you're projecting a perverse, discordant energy. That energy that's emanating from you on a consistent basis radiates from you. It affects other people, living, as well as discarnate entities. Deceased, those who have died, ancestral spirits, those who are earthbound, who didn't make a smooth transition to the ancestral realm. So therefore, your emanations affect them. The only ones that will respond are those who are on the same frequency as you are. So if you're on a discordant, disaligned frequency, and you're projecting negative emanations, those will repel other people who are not on the same frequency, but they will be attractive to those who are, because they can harmonize with that discordant energy. They're repelled by harmonious energy, but they're drawn to discordant energy. So you will affect those who are alive, as well as those who have made their transition, are discarnate spirit. You therefore draw those individuals, disordered individuals, to you. Your conscious and unconscious interaction with them engenders more disordered energy, because now they're drawn to you. Their negative projections affect you. You can feel them. You absorb them, and yours are affecting them. You draw these kind of negative individuals and entities into your life, physically and non-physically, and you're affected by their emanation. As long as they're around you, and as long as you are disaligned from your own nkra and you're out of order, the emanations from you, generated by you, as well as those coming from people who are attracted to you, living and deceased, incorporate that, you absorb that. And the more you get bombarded with such discordant energy, you experience that as AMANEHUNU, or suffering or affliction at some point. Now, ritually realigning with your crowd works to repel the negative, disordered individuals and or entities and restore a sense of balance. However, all of the damage is not immediately repaired. So you can reverse polarity. It's like you have two magnets on a table. If the like polarities face, they repel one another. You can reverse polarities, and then you put them close, and they will jump together. They will attract. When you engage in disordered thoughts, intentions, and actions because you've rejected the pull of your crowd that's in your head, that deity that's in your head that's pulling you, you reject that, now you're disordered. You start thinking thoughts that are disordered. You engage in behaviors that are disordered. You create negativity. You draw other people who are on the same disordered frequency. Their energy is bombarding you as well. You start feeling that negative energy. You absorb it. You're projecting negative energy as well. There's a tension there, and you experience that as suffering or affliction. So, but if you want to change that, then you get back in alignment with your crop ritually. You reverse that polarity, and now you begin to repel those individuals just like the two magnets will repel. You can repel disordered individuals and entities, and the only kind of people you will draw to yourself are those who are on a harmonious vibration just as you are. However, if you have been engaged in disorder for a while, even if you reverse polarities and get back in track, the damage that you did is not instantaneously repaired. And this is where we get into transcarnational suffering, intergenerational suffering or trauma, and how to overcome that ritually. So we give the example. If one gets shot, the bullet being lodged in the tissue is a disordered situation, of course. When the bullet is surgically removed and the person is sewed up, the immediate disorder has been addressed. However, the wound is not fully healed. Although the bullet is removed and they're sewed up, of course the wound is not healed yet just because they've been sewn up. Further infection could occur if one is not focused. Even if further infection does not occur because the wound is kept clean, the wound is not totally healed even when the stitches are removed. The body operates according to physiological cycles, and there will be a time period where pain and some suffering will continue until the body can fully heal the wound. When we engage in disorder and open a wound in our kahibit, which is an ancient Kemet term for the aura, infection or disordered entities can set in. So just like you open a wound in your body, an infection can set in if you cut yourself. If you open a wound in your kahibit because you've become disaligned from your crop, there's an opening, infection meaning disordered entities, can set in. Those discarnate spirits that are always hanging around, but normally they bounce right off you, that don't affect you at all, and you don't even have to think about it. But when you engage in disorder, you lower your immunity. It's like your physical body. You engage in disorder, don't get enough sleep, you don't eat properly, and so forth, don't exercise, then your immunity drops, and little microbes that normally bounce right off of you, or viruses that people have at work, the flu or whatever, they can cough all over you normally, that doesn't affect you. But now, because your immunity has been compromised, those microbes can get in, and then they can make you sick and devastate you. It's the same thing physically, the same thing spiritually. You open a wound in your kahabi, you're out of order, harmony with order. Your spiritual immunity drops. Now you open a wound or an opening in your kahabi, your aura, and now discarnate entities with their perverse vibrations that normally bounce off of you just like microbes and viruses. Physically, these viral type entities, deceased individuals who didn't make a smooth transition to the ancestral realm, they can infect you, meaning they can enter that womb in your aura and attach themselves like a leech attaches itself to a marine animal and begins to, feed off of the individual or entity. When those entities set in the spiritual wound, we can then suffer from various manifestations of such an infection. If we do not realign with our nkra or krawa, the disorder will continue. It is akin to not addressing a pain and allowing the pain, so-called tumor, to grow until there is a crisis situation. So just like you can have a tumor that's growing and you don't address it and it continues to grow, you can also have an infection spiritually where these entities connect to you. You have negative influences from perverse ancestral spirits, discarnate spirits, and those who are not related to you. But you don't do anything about that, and it continues to grow, and their influence continues to grow because you're not repelling them, because you're not in alignment with your own nkra, so you can't repel them. You're actually attracting them. Now, just as we can die from not addressing the tumor and find ourselves in the spirit realm because we didn't address it, so can we die without addressing a spiritual wound or infection. So just like somebody can die from a tumor, they never dealt with it, so they died. Or you can have a spiritual infection, engage in all kinds of disordered activity, spiritual disalignment, and then you can die never having healed yourself spiritually. When you die, you do not automatically become a fictional entity, angel, and on your slate is white clean. You become a discarnate spirit. Don't make a smooth transition to the spirit realm, and you therefore are still affected negatively, and these are the kind of entities that will cause problems for people in the physical world. They will hang around their family's house. This is spirit maybe died in the house or got killed outside the house, and their spirit still hangs around and causes anxiety and tension within the living family members because they were not aligned. So we can later reincarnate still not having addressed the infection. So when these negative spirits, you make a transition, somebody makes their transition in your family, they were an alcoholic, they were disordered, they were anxious, tense, dominated by negativity, their spirit is still anxious, tense, disordered, and so forth, as a discarnate ancestral spirit, lowercase a, not a spiritually cultivated ancestral spirit. They're still hanging around. They still have that infection. They never align themselves with order. They never develop their spiritual maturity. They can exist like that for generations as a discarnate spirit, and different descendants will, if they're a little bit clairvoyant, they can see that spirit in the house. They can feel them and so forth. That negative spirit will reincarnate, and they never address their infection. So they still have the same infection. They didn't just return and you have a clean slate. This is not Hinduism. It's not that foolishness. People incarnate who used to be criminals in the past. People incarnate who have suffered trauma in the past, and their spirits come. People who were enslaved in the past, enslaved, put in chains, thrown, in boats, sailed across the ocean. Some of us have reincarnated. We never overcame that trauma. We come into the world with that negativity, that anger, that energy. Some anger is justified and is harmonious as fire. some anger based on frustration because of other situations is not harmonious. There's a difference between anger, which is fire, and frustration, which leads to implosion. Anger or fire, the kind of anger based on fire, is divine. Frustration is not. So we can later incarnate, as we said, still not having addressed the infection, thereby remaining open to further infection. Just like if you don't address a wound, it remains open to further infection. If you don't address a spiritual wound and you die with that, and it's not addressed even in the spirit realm, then you can reincarnate through one of your descendants generations later, and you never affected that healing. So you're still open to further infection. The wound has never been closed, never been sealed. Yet, you have come back into the world, you're a newborn, so it is the responsibility of the community to have structures in place that can identify infection of the spirit and support a healing process. These structures include divination, other ritual practices. So when children come back into the world, we divine for them, and we see what kind of spirit they have, if they have trauma that they've brought from a previous lifetime from the spirit realm, and what needs to be done to realign them so they won't start off their new life with an open spiritual wound. This is a way that we have always addressed what could potentially become intergenerational trauma, transcarnational trauma through successive incarnation. It's the responsibility of the community to put these things in place, put culture in place, a way of life. When you have a culture in place, then you can mitigate most of these negative situations. Preventively, you can preempt them. But then if something slips by and you still have culture, then you can address it even though it got past the first, gate, the first protection, then you still have culture to deal with that. Now, our disalignment from our nkra, in the previous lifetime could have come about through ignorance. We could have been engaged in just ignorant people, immature people, negligence, arrogance, immaturity. So that's how you get it disaligned from your nkra. You reject it because you're ignorant. You reject it because you're negligent. You reject it because you're arrogant. Reject it because you're immature. Or through criminality. You're a criminal. You're disordered. You don't want to do what's correct. You want to do what's encoded within your nkra. So you're a criminal and you disalign from your nkra. That could have happened in a previous lifetime and you died in that state of disalignment from the nkra. And you reincarnate like that. There are some individuals, for example, who in a previous lifetime brutalized people and seem to have never suffered for it. Yet, every person that is born is a returning spirit. They're not, in our community, they're not brand new spirits being born who never lived in the world before. No black person in America is coming into the world who never lived previously. We are returning ancestresses and ancestors. So every person that is born is a returning spirit. So somebody may have brutalized some people in a previous lifetime, and during their lifetime they never suffered for it, never went to jail, nothing. Yet every person that is born is a returning spirit. Such an individual, because of his lust, is drawn into a womb of a descendant in a certain area and situation where he will ultimately be positioned, meaning he positioned himself to have a quote-unquote wonderful life for years until one day he is severely brutalized and paralyzed. In this case, the criminal has suffered the effects of the perversity he set in motion in a previous lifetime. He drew disordered spirits to him in a previous lifetime and continued to do so in this lifetime. Every time we see an individual suffering, homeless, paralyzed, etc., we have to be more cognizant. We would ask, is this person one who has caused suffering and has now inherited the effects of his action? If so, deserves the suffering, and we should not attempt to assist him in any fashion. Maybe this person was a child abuser, murderer, etc. We should not step in the way of this divine retribution. You come in contact with a homeless person, somebody's going through a great deal of suffering, you ask your own nkra, you attune to your own nkra. Should I be of assistance when they ask for money or something else, or should I not? If you feel pulled by your nkra, no, then you do not. If you feel pulled by your nkra, yes, then you do so. When you work with your own nkra, and we have shrines established for the nkra is called the Ori Inu, the inner Ori, the divine consciousness or divine head in Yoruba, called the Se or Se Lido in Vodun. We have shrines or altars for the crowd where we communicate with this divinity that dwells within our head region. So you can learn when the impulses you receive or the pulls that you receive from your head, is it really coming from your crowd, or just coming from your own conditionings or from other individuals or entities that have given you information and you just retained it, or you're being influenced by somebody else, or is it coming from your crowd? You can determine that, and that's our responsibility as adults to learn how to determine that. We start that as children, start developing that relationship with our crowd even before puberty and strongly afterwards. So when you come in contact with somebody who's suffering, you ask your crowd, should I assist? Of course, if it's one of the whites in their offspring, it's automatically no just from the gate. But if it's one of our people, you ask, should you assist? You ask your crowd, if you feel pulled to do so, do so. If you don't, then you don't. Because your crowd is telling you this is a person, this is an individual, most likely, that has done something to put themselves in the position to be suffering. So you don't step in the way of that divine retribution. If they created suffering, if they were brutalizing or raping or molesting people, then they deserve to suffer every bit as much and more than they made the other people suffer and the community suffer. So you don't step in and try to help them, let them suffer, let them die in that suffering. Yet there are some who suffer as children and adults because of a previous lifetime where an infection of the spirit was opened as a result of ignorance or immaturity, etc. Now, this is an indictment upon the entire community. This means people today who are suffering as children and adults because in a previous lifetime there was an infection of the spirit that was opened because of ignorance or immaturity, but they died as an ignorant person, an immature person. They never healed themselves spiritually. They never got in alignment spiritually. And then they come back into the world with an open wound in their spirit. Come back in a new generation, a new reincarnation. Their spirit is still open to infection, wounded because they never healed themselves. And now they're children and later adults, and they find themselves suffering. And we see children in our community and adults suffering in our community today. Some of these people in the particular class we're talking about now are specifically those who are suffering as a result of ignorance, immaturity from a previous lifetime that opened up that womb, and now in this lifetime they are suffering. They are still suffering. Now, and we say this is an indictment upon the entire community. Yes, we have a personal responsibility to align with our Okrawa, yet we also have a collective responsibility as an Aman, as a community, to have structures in place, culture, which will protect people and place people on the path to alignment and a realignment with the Akrawa. This is a major function of Nanasom, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion, to put that ritual practices in place for our people. When we don't do so, when we don't have a culture in place, or are neglectful as a community, we allow individuals who are born into the world to fall into disorder because we don't have a culture in place. They fall into disorder, perpetual disorder. They die in disorder. They return via bebra, which is Akan for reincarnation, and some have the infection of the spirit that is still open. They draw disordered entities or parasites to them just like any open wound. They suffer from child molestation, abuse, enslavement of a village, etc. So we give an example. If a 2-year-old walks out into the street and gets hit by a car, the community does not blame the 2-year-old. The community blames the parent for not having a structure in place whereby the 2-year-old would never be able to be in a position to ever be hit by a car. While the 2-year-old is actually a returning ancestor or ancestress and may have placed themselves in a negative situation, a disordered state in a previous lifetime out of ignorance or immaturity, thereby being drawn into a womb of a descendant which will place them in such a negative situation, there still exists a communal responsibility to acknowledge this possibility and establish cultural structures to prevent such occurrences. So the 2-year-old is a returning ancestor or ancestress? How did they come to be drawn into the womb of the kind of mother who is so neglectful that they wouldn't watch their 2-year-old child and make sure that they get hit by a car? How did they get drawn into that particular womb instead of the womb of one of their descendants who's very responsible, very focused, and would never allow their child to be put in a position where they, get hit by a car or just wander out into the street? You see some parents just see their kids just walking close to the curves and streets all the time, and people are always yelling at them, get your kid, watch your child, or trying to protect them because the parent is neglectful. How did you get drawn into that kind of womb and born through that kind of womb and put yourself at the mercy of that kind of quote-unquote parent? Maybe you were somebody in a previous lifetime who was negative, immature, ignorant, negligent. You were on that low vibration, low frequency, and now you died in that same state. And you're only drawn to one of your descendants generations later who are on the same negative vibration. And that woman becomes your mother, or that male becomes your father, and you're drawn into the womb through him because you were connected to him. He connected with a woman that copulated, and your spirit was drawn into the womb because you were connected to him. You were one of his ancestresses or ancestors. So because of the way you functioned in the previous lifetime, you sentenced yourself to be drawn to only those low-functioning people, and one of those low-functioning people would later become your mother because your spirit was drawn into her womb as opposed to someone else's. However, because we understand that possibility exists, as a community, we should have cultural structures in place to mitigate those circumstances. We should acknowledge we have that possibility, establish cultural structures to prevent such occurrences. For example, to give another example, a very ignorant, immature, self-destructive individual lives a life of disalignment from the Okrawa, and dies this way. They become a discarnate spirit who is full of anxiety. At some point, they reincarnate through one of their descendants. They do have an Nkra, but they are disaligned from it. They are disobedient. They're drawn into the womb of a descendant who in some ways is on the same low vibration frequency, or else they could have possibly been drawn into a different descendant's womb. So they have not been healed of their infection from one incarnation to the next. They therefore are still a magnet for parasites, bacteria, just like any open wound. If you have a wound, that's a wound. If it remains open, it's a magnet for bacteria. That's why we do something to close the wound. That's why melanin comes and helps to clear out the wound, and it forms a protective Band-Aid on your body, a black Band-Aid, which we call a scab. Melanin or abatum does that so that it can protect the wound from further infection while it's also healing the wound up under the scab, up under the black Band-Aid. It's like any open wound is a magnet for parasites or bacteria. Any open spiritual wound is a magnet for parasites, discarnate spirits, negative entities. So, such an individual who came through a womb like that, a negative womb, a low vibration womb, and so forth, they were not healed of their infection from the previous incarnation into this one. So they are therefore still a magnet for parasites, bacteria, like any other womb. They come in with a negative spirit, they're still disordered. And therefore they are a magnet for other disordered individuals and entities. Specifically, if the community or family they are born into are controlled by white culture, spiritual infection, disalignment from the Okrawa intergenerationally, and thus have no structures in place to mitigate potential negative scenarios. This quote-unquote child is the same ancestor or ancestress who previously lived a life of disorder and is now operating through a new body, because this old spirit in a new body is still a magnet for parasites. Parasitical individuals and or entities attach themselves or are drawn to the individual. This quote-unquote child then suffers. There can be injury, molestation, abuse, etc. So then we ask the question, from whence does the AMANEHUNU or suffering come? While the child, quote-unquote child, this returning ancestor in a previous lifetime may have created an infection within his or her spirit through disorder, disalignment from the Akhan, and so forth, there were two opportunities for the community to have avoided the negative results in this present incarnation. One, when the individual died in the previous incarnation, sound funerary practices by the family could have assisted the discarnate individual with making a transition to Asamando, as we call it, the ancestral realm in Akan, so that they could work on their spiritual development to repair their spiritual wounds as much as possible so that they could reincarnate in a situation that was more harmonious. When we make a smooth transition to the ancestral realm, we're in the company of our ancestresses and ancestors who are honorable. They help us develop while we are living in the ancestral realm for generations, so that when we reincarnate, we'll be drawn into the kind of womb that's a more harmonious womb, the kind of parents and community who have cultural structures in place to protect us. If we're drawn into the womb of a crackhead or a parent that, hangs around people who smoke weed and drink and engage in negative activity and draw low vibration type individuals to them, people who are child molesters and rapists and everything else, because we come into that kind of situation and there's no cultural defenses in place, now we set our children up to draw these kind of individuals to them, and we don't have anything in place because we're just as disordered as the individuals who we are drawing to the space. So, but if we engage sound funerary practices, and AKUA deals with that, and we help that negative individual who died, we help them develop themselves spiritually in the ancestral realm through a sound funerary practice, help usher them into the ancestral realm, help them develop, so that when they return, they reincarnate in a better position, with a better family, descendants who are more harmonious. The second way the community could have avoided negative projections towards a child that is returned is when the returning spirit reincarnated, the community could have had ritual structures in place to assess the spiritual condition of the child, and once assessed, establish protocols to assist the child in repelling disordered entities, as well as living individuals who are parasitical. While the child would still encounter challenges in life, the nature of the challenges would be much less severe. For example, falling off of a bike and scratching your chin on the concrete as opposed to getting hit by a car and suffering major injuries, for example. So we had two opportunities to help this individual. People who are living right now, children and adults who are suffering. Some of them were individuals who were engaged through ignorance, immaturity, negligence in previous lifetimes. They were disaligned from their crowd, disordered. When they died, that infection was never healed. They return through a descendant who has the same kind of disordered or out of harmony energy as them, and they're brought into that situation. And now they grow up as a child or eventually into adulthood, and many of us have family structures, situations where everybody in the family is not harmonious. There's abuse, there's all kinds of things going on. We reincarnate into a situation like that, drawn into that kind of situation. But the community still had a chance to mitigate that. If the community would have had a culture in place, like in our traditional communities where a child is born, you have a naming ceremony. You do divination to assess the spiritual position of the child, disposition, see where they're at, what deities govern them, and you put rituals in place to protect them, and so forth. You have in traditional communities such a low incidence of child molestation or rape or all kinds of things that it's almost non-existent when we have those things in place. When we don't have those things in place and we embrace white culture, anytime we embrace white culture, you find the incidence of child molestation and rape and murder and beating and domestic violence and abuse and alcohol abuse and all those things are exponentially increased when we embrace white culture and we reject our own values because we don't put cultural structures in place to protect our people. It is true that the individual had a personal responsibility in a previous lifetime to not allow him or herself to become spiritually disordered, and therefore a magnet for all kinds of parasites, just like we have a responsibility to take care of our bodies so that we do not become a magnet for all kinds of bacteria. However, everyone will not always be in tune spiritually. This is why we have amambre, culture, protocols established to assist those who are not spiritually mature enough to keep themselves out of harm's way, just as we establish rules to make sure the baby never gets hit, gets near the street, let alone getting hit by a car. So there's a balance between individual responsibility, transcarnational through successive reincarnation, and communal responsibility. A balance between individual responsibility and communal responsibility. The community is responsible, the individual is responsible, and there's a meeting between the two. We are living the negative effects of the imbalance today. This is the main reason why the whites and their offspring always seek to destroy our culture and keep us from understanding the laws of bebra, reincarnation. They know that when we neglect the laws, we will not have a proper or full view of the world and our condition. We will therefore continually reincarnate, making the same mistakes. In order to limit AMANEHUNU, or suffering, to a bare minimum going forward, we must constantly seek to remain in alignment with our nkra, so that we can make decisions that are harmonious. We must also establish cultural structures that perpetuate this practice, thereby affecting the larger Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African community consciously and unconsciously. We have the capacity to stop the cycle of transcarnational AMANEHUNU, or suffering. It is rooted in our amamre, or culture. And we also say with regard to crime, for example, part of the cultural structure includes the punishment of criminals. Our normal practice worldwide as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, on the continent as well as here in America up until the past couple of decades. Our practice worldwide, for example, is to kill a child molester, not give him access to therapy. The same is true for murderers, rapists, those who beat, torture, maim others, and various other serious crimes. We punish immediately and with the requisite level of severity. This greatly decreases the incidence of crime transcarnationally, when one is absolutely certain that they will never escape retribution for crime in the community. The whites and their offspring want to go soft on rapists, child molesters, pedophiles, people who torture other people, beat, maim other people. You see people who beat people down, like beat women down, for example, Chris Brown and Rihanna. He left her for dead, and all he got was a slap on the wrist. Now, of course, they want to promote that in the black community. There's the reason why he got a slap on the wrist is because they want to promote beating black women in the black community. And they promote her because she accepted him back. There was a perfect situation for the whites and their offspring to perpetuate that kind of disordered pseudo-relationship in the community by allowing him to continue to go and just get a slap on the wrist. That's what they do. They go soft on anything that's destructive to our community. They want to make sure, they want to say, well, these people just need therapy. A child molester needs therapy. A child rapist needs therapy. We kill child molesters. That's the response. That's the divine response. That's what we've always done for thousands and thousands of years in Afuraitkaitnit, as well as in America, in the so-called 20th century and up until now, up until the past couple of decades when the whites and their offspring, we've embraced their culture and we started trying to make excuses for certain things. But prior to that, if somebody molested a child, they would kill the child molester. Certain families, they'd get together, they'd get certain people in the family, they would stab them in the throat, shoot them, beat them to death with bats, whatever. And that's, number one, you remove an enemy to our community. If somebody molests your child, they are an enemy to the community. Anything that happens to them after that, it doesn't matter because they are an enemy. You can throw them to the dog. They can get maimed, mutilated, ripped apart. They are your enemy. They are parasites. So, number one, you remove the parasite. You eradicate the parasite. That's the effect of dealing with that kind of, activity immediately and with the requisite level of severity. The other thing it does is it shows those who are potential molesters. What it shows them is, in this community, if I engage that process, I will be tortured and I will be killed, no question. And when people know that that's an absolute certain fact, that if they engage in that, they will be tortured and they will be killed immediately, that's when those people rethink acting on these desires that they have. And then they begin to think, why do I keep having these desires? it must be something wrong with me because I know these desires are actually suicidal because I know I will be tortured and killed if I act on them. Why am I having desires that I know will get me tortured and killed? So therefore, they will do one of two things. They will either seek some help from somebody to try to help them get rid of these desires so that they won't act on them, or they will self-medicate and do drugs, do whatever to keep themselves from engaging that. Either way, we have, because of what we do to the criminals, we have stopped the potential criminal from engaging in the act. These molesters, they're not doing it just because they're trying to control somebody. Oh, we just want to have control, and I was molested as a child, so I just want to have control, and this is why I acted out. That's not the reason they're committing the crimes. That's what the whites and their offspring teach. And when you take classes and when you study the DSM-4 and now 5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for disorders that, you know, anybody who's trained as a therapist has to study, of course. You have to get certified and all these different things. The whites and their offspring teach that rape is about control and child molestation is about control, and people who were molested as children, and this is why the grown males now engage these processes, and that's the major reason, and it is not the major reason why they do that. It influences them, but the major reason why they actually carry it out is because most of them feel that they will get away with it. That's why they carry it out. And they engage in machinations to make sure they try to get away with it. If they saw somebody who was a known drug dealer, who was known for taking bats and beating the hell out of people just for no reason, and always walked around strapped, and if they saw the little drug dealer's daughter standing next to them, they wouldn't walk up to the drug dealer's daughter and try to molest them in front of the drug dealer because they know they would get killed on the spot. They know they would get beaten in the head with a bat to death on the spot. So it doesn't matter about control and all that other stuff. They're not going to do it because it's going to cause them physical harm, and they're not going to get away with it. But they will try to lure some other child, try to corner some other child and make machinations and give gifts to them and all these other kinds of things to try to lure them away because they know what they're doing. They are calculating. It's not just something that they couldn't control. They can control it if they know they're going to get killed. If they saw a police officer with a gun, the shotgun, standing next to a child, they wouldn't run up on the child and try to grab the child because they're calculating. They know what they're doing. They try to lure them away and get them alone and so forth. So these individuals know exactly what they're doing. They're calculating. And the reason why they engage the process is because they feel they can get away with it. If they thought they couldn't get away with it, they wouldn't do it. The vast 99+% of them would not do it. Most of them don't do that in the open where everybody can see. What they do is they lure the children away to try to get away with it. So that's the reason. If you put something in place where it is absolutely certain that anybody who engages in that behavior will never get away with it and they will be killed, tortured, and killed immediately, which is what they deserve, then the vast majority of those individuals who have those desires will not act on them. They will either turn to doing drugs to quell those desires, or they will turn to people to try to help them quell those desires. This is one way to put the punishment of crime, swift and severe, in place, which mitigates most of these circumstances. Now, you also have individuals who are negatively affected by discarnate spirits and so forth and all these different things. When you have a culture that can address these things specifically, then you can help these people remove these negative entities and the negative influence of this spiritually open to discarnate spirits and so forth, and other people's projections. Ritually, the ritual culture can help them, assist them to expel these and repel these negative spirits. We're talking about people who had those desires but never acted on them. If you act on them, then it's over. You get taken out. So therefore, you better not act on anything. And the vast majority of the people who have had those kind of desires, or they were molested as children, the vast majority of people who were molested as children, they never saw like that. They're the greatest defenders of children because they know what happened to them. Many of the people who are social workers, who are community support workers, case managers, therapists, lawyers for children, guardian ad litem, psychiatrists, psychologists, educators, doctors, lawyers, and so forth. They were molested as children. They got into these fields or got into the field of human services so that they could protect children. There are other people who were molested as children who decided that even though they didn't become a professional, maybe they turned to drugs and their life spiraled out of control. But one thing that they will do, even if they're alcoholic or whatever, if they think that someone's near a child, they will be the greatest defender of that child. They will try to kill anybody who gets near a child. So the vast majority of people who have suffered that, they overcame it either through engaging in occupation where all they do is try to help children and help communities, or even if they spiraled out of control, they still are defenders. Or some mother who lives in an economically depressed area, has a hard existence, but one thing she does is she watches all the children, makes sure nothing happens to them. Everybody who has those kinds of desires, many of them, what they will do, the vast majority of them, they will self-medicate. Because it's like, why am I having these desires? They start drinking alcohol. They start smoking weed. They start doing other drugs. Why? Because they know the desires are wrong, and they decide, I am not going to engage. I don't care how strong the desire is, because it happened to me. I know it's wrong. I know how negative it is. I don't know why I have the desire, so therefore I would rather do drugs than follow these desires or keep having these desires plague me. The vast majority of people who have suffered from molestation never touch a child. So that is not an excuse for any individual to touch a child. When the whites and their offspring, so-called therapists and theorists and so forth, try to promote that idea, and therefore these grown adults need therapy, and we're not talking about children who watch other parents and they imitate what the parents are doing, and then they mess around with their other children and try to molest children. They're imitating what parents have done, and some of them have been molested as children. We're talking about adults. We're talking about, well, it happened to me, and this is the only reason I did it. They did it because they wanted to do it. They're criminal. They're calculating, and they deserve to be exterminated. Now, when people who are engaged in certain activities or thoughts about activities, whether it's molestation, murder, rape, all kinds of activities that will create suffering, or the individual is suffering from the effects of that kind of suffering causes a clamp on the minds of people. It shuts down their perception. They become constricted to a certain extent. They have a tunnel vision. They become disaligned from their craft. They suffer for certain things. There's a disalignment that often takes place. They weren't responsible on an individual level, but then the community wasn't responsible as well very often because there were no structures in place to head off these possible occurrences. So there was an imbalance between the individual responsibility and the communal responsibility, and the result is disalignment from the craft and suffering. And it goes, as we said, when the person dies like that, they can reincarnate and can be transcarnational. We have ritual structures in place through Nanasom, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion, where we have a ritual process we call the KUM method for the substance abuse abstinence, domestic abuse neutralization, trauma recovery alignment, AKUMA TRA, where a person deals with their nkra, a ritual that deals with their nkra to help realign the person. You realign yourself with your nkra, dealing with that divinity within you to realign. And when you engage that process of realignment, then you reverse that polarity and you begin to be attracted to those individuals and entities in your community as well as your ancestresses and ancestors who are on that same harmonious vibration, and you can be more open and hear what they've been trying to tell you. You can feel the pull in the direction they've been trying to pull you. You can begin to repel other negative entities they've been trying to help you repel all along. So ritually, when you engage your nkra and engage your ancestresses and ancestors, then you can engage this process and you can restore order. We've had numerous individuals, as we said in the beginning, just from reading our information. For example, Ajimi Fosem, imbecilic behavior, the idiocy of rationalizing marijuana use when we talk about the negative effects of marijuana on abatum, on melanin-dominant people, as well as the negative effects of discarnate spiritual entities who become attached to people who, once they start doing drugs, they open themselves up to these negative entities, and they become leached upon by these entities. And this is why this discordant behavior manifests. So it attacks us physiologically for melanin-dominant people, much greater than it does for any other group. That's why we get hooked quicker and stay hooked longer on drugs than any other group, because of the molecular structure of melanin or abatum and the drugs that come into the system. They bind. We have more melanin or abatum in our systems than any other people, so that those chemicals just devastate our entire being, whereas other people can do cocaine on a weekend and go to work Monday morning. Our people do cocaine and we get devastated by it. It goes to every part of our body where melanin is. It binds with the melanin chemical and it devastates us. The whites and their offspring know this. This is why they are pushing reform of drug laws, pushing the reform of marijuana laws, because they want us to be a nation of zombies. They want us to be a nation that we destroy our melanin, our abatum, fill ourselves up with drugs, continuously die of heart disease and lung cancer, which marijuana has 50% more carcinogens than regular cigarettes. Of course, they try to hide those facts because they want us to believe that we should be smoking, becoming drug addicts, and destroying ourselves. And it also opens us up for the influence of negative spiritual entities. The whites and their offspring know all of that. This is why they're pushing it. We've had many people who just read our article on that, and upon reading it, they stopped smoking marijuana after having been smoking marijuana for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or longer. Some people simply listen to the Kuku Tuntum, the ancestral jurisdiction, hearing the names of the divinities, hearing our ancestral culture, hearing the messages from the Nanasom and the Abosom, stops them from engaging in negative self-destructive activity, changing their relationships with their significant others and their family members and people in the community, making them more focused on their NKra, wanting to engage in productive behavior, rejecting any kind of drug use or self-destructive behavior, promiscuity, and other kinds of things. All these various, positive effects by embracing ancestral culture. So we have the KUM method. It's on the website. There are links to that, and of course you can contact us via the website so we can give that information, that ritual method to engage these processes. Okay, so a couple of questions. If anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. If you have a question or a comment on the phone, just press number 1, and you can raise your hand and we can see you. Okay, so one of the questions is, how can I realign my NKra? Now, for starters, you can look at, in fact, you can go to the AKUMA TRA page. You'll see the KUM method. KUM method is an acronym for Kukuntutum, Ubin Shane, Wabojida, and then the M is for Mpaibo, which is a ritual prayer, which we have. We send that information to you, and you're basically establishing a portable, very simple shrine for your NKra, that divinity that dwells within you that you were born with. Nobody can give you a divinity. That includes people who say they get initiated into the priesthood and priestesses of various things. Nobody's being given deity. The only individuals who assign a force in nature to you, to your NKra, to your soul, is Amenet and Amen, Nyamewa, and the Nyame. The Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father. That happens pre-incarnation. You are born into the world assigned to these forces in creation. So, that divinity is within you. So you establish a very simple shrine for your NKra to communicate and listen to your NKra, meditate with your NKra, do a ritual invocation so that you can begin that process of realignment. So go to the AKUMA TRA page. You'll see the KUM method. But first, what you can do, even before that, You can listen to the Kukutuntum Ubisheng Wabojira just as it says on the page, but we also, because you're talking about the Okra, the Ka, the soul, divine consciousness, we have the book, the Okra Complex, the Soul of Akanfo, where we detail the nature and function of the Okra, and we also talk about the establishment of a shrine for the Okra. So I'll put a link in the chat room for that particular text. The version of that text is a free download, so you can check that out. So you can read that, and then you can read that book. There's also a video, 2.5-hour video, where we take the book and we examine all the various concepts in the book. And then you can also send us an email at Akwamuman@odwirafo.com. The email is on the website in the contact us section if you have any more questions or questions about the ritual method and so forth. Ritual method associated with Akuma Sa, substance abuse abstinence, Akuma Dain, with domestic abuse, neutralization, Akuma Tra, trauma, recovery, alignment. The ritual method is the same fundamental ritual method for each situation. It's slightly different with the substance abuse, but it's still dealing with the Kum method, Kukutuntum, Ubinsheng, Wabojira, and Mpai Ba ritual prayer. So you read and listen to those first 3 products or works, publications, but then you're prepared at that point. You have the foundation cosmologically and spiritually to engage the ritual process, dealing with your crowd ritually, the 21-day process, and this has helped a number of individuals. Of course, this is a free service to the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African Black community only, of course, and these are 3 of the many services that we offer in addition to our publications, service to the community that we offer via our website that people can contact us about. Okay, so let me see. Are there any other questions with regard to that? Looking in the chat real quick. Now, just a couple of announcements for the people who came in later. Again, next week, July 5th, we will be in Hartford, Connecticut, doing a presentation out there. We will be dealing with various publications, Afuraka, Afurakai, the origin of the term Africa, Madanechi, Divine Law and Divine Hate, Kukutuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, fictional characters of the Bible, Quran, Talmud, and so forth. We have the article, More Means Dead. We go into detail about that. We talked about that last night. We're going to have part 2 next week from last night's broadcast. Number of different topics. We will be dealing with the information we're talking about tonight as well. Ritual practices, the establishment of an ancestral shrine, the association, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion, and resolution, which are 2 halves of a whole. Intelligence, or Nyansa, wisdom, is composed of 2 complementary poles. The expansive and contractive poles of Nyansa, or wisdom, is revolution and resolution. We revolt to overthrow the enemy. We resolve to end the conflict and bring resolution and eradicate the enemy. We don't fight just for the sake of fighting. We fight to resolve the issue, remove the issue, and reestablish our culture and defend our culture, our sovereignty. So we talk about that as well, and how it's related directly to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, and ancestral religion and culture. So we'll be engaging all these topics in the event in Connecticut. We also have confirmed a venue in Las Vegas, Nevada, on July 19th. Be looking on the website for that, and we're working on an event for July 12th. We'll be sending out some information there. We're looking at a couple of different areas on the East Coast, but we have some number of different venues we're looking at. We are having a fundraiser as right now and continuous for some of these events. What we do at the event is that we give away a free copy of the book that we're speaking on. We've done that ever since the last year, we've given away over 300 free copies of our softcover books. So we sell the softcover books. They range between $8 and $11. You can order them on the website, odwirafo.com/nhoma, NHOMA.html. And we also have a program where people can distribute our books. You can buy them from us wholesale, and then you can sell them retail, and you can make some money every time you sell some of our publications, our softcover publications. As an independent, as an entrepreneur, as an independent contractor, you wouldn't be working for us. You'd be working for yourself, just like purchasing any other product wholesale, and you can sell it wherever you are. We have some people engaged in that process to not only disseminate good information, accurate information, but also to help people economically, to help generate revenue for themselves in a positive fashion, where we're serving the community and assisting ourselves at the same time. We're having a fundraiser. If you can go to our Achetie page, if you would like to order some of our softcover publications, you can go to the Nhoma page for that, or the Achetie page if you'd like to make a donation towards that free book giveaway, and also the events that we do in the different cities. We just had an event a few days ago on a Kwesi Sunday. It was a good event in Maryland. The events are free for our people. We do not charge people to come and to our workshops. We don't charge an admissions fee. We do not charge organizers to put on events either. We don't charge a speaker's fee. So our events are free. The way we generate the funds is through support from the community to travel and give this information to our people. So we establish that precedent where we go to different cities, we give this information freely. We give a free copy of the book if possible, but of course the PDF versions of all of our books are free anyway. But some people would like a softcover version, so at least the book that we're speaking on, we'll give a free copy of that away, and then the other 6 that we have in softcover, we will sell those, and they're at a small price. So if you would like to participate in that fundraiser, you can make a purchase of maybe a couple of the $8 books or whatever, and we'll ship those out to you, but it also assists us in raising the funds so that we can do these presentations in various cities, including your city as well. If you'd like us to come to your city, just send us an email via our website, odwirafo.com, and we can make arrangements for that. We speak to small groups as well as large groups. We speak to study groups as well as large groups as well. So you can hit us up on via the email for that. Okay, another question you said, is it possible to find out what type of person I was in the previous life? Now, all of that, of course, is connected. It's encoded within your NKra. Just like you have a memory of when you were a child in this lifetime, every experience you have is encoded within your NKra. Of course, encoded within your abatum, your melanin as well, so it already exists within you. Sometimes you have flashes of certain things, or you're drawn to certain things, or even drawn to certain ethnic groups or artifacts of certain ethnic groups from the continent. You're drawn to those more so than all others. Like somebody who was Akan in a previous lifetime, you're still Akan now. So when you see kente cloth or nkra symbols, which are Akan cultural productions, artistic productions, then you'll be very drawn to those nkra symbols, or very drawn to that kente cloth, because this is what you used to wear in your previous incarnation, previous lifetime. Same thing with Yoruba and other various cultures, Mindi and so forth. Different things that are connected to those cultures you'll be drawn to. You can get more detailed information through connecting with your NKra, as well as your ancestresses and ancestors, through your ancestral shrine work. That is part of the process. So when you go to the AKUMA TRA page, you will find information about the Nkomre Ancestral Shrine Communication. We have information on that, videos that examine that information, and then you can also email us as well. Also, when we go out to the different events in different cities, we deal with that ritually, and we also, answer those kind of questions, as well. People have a number of different questions that they often need answers to, so we deal with that directly. All right. So again, Medase for checking out this special edition of EGUA Marketplace. We will be back on, of course, next Benada and Abenada Tuesday with our Ojita broadcast. So, again, let me put the link. The Achede link, so the Achede page or the Nhoma page, Odwirafo.com, ODWIRAF as in free, O.com. That's the website, /Achede, AKYEDE, page.html. So that's the Achede page, which is a page for contributions. You can also get to that link via the Nhoma page on our website, the publications page. So even when you go to Odwirafo.com, the index page, and you scroll down through the introduction, you will see the link to the Nhoma page. Nhoma means publications. You can get to all the publications there. You can order the softcover versions. You can also make a donation if you'd like to assist us in generating these funds for us traveling to your city as well as other cities, giving free presentations, and also the services that we provide, inclusive of the ritual, connection for the AKUMA and AKUMA TRA, assisting people with overcoming substance abuse issues, domestic violence, including sexual abuse issues, overcoming intergenerational trauma, overcoming these misdiagnoses very often, depression, major depressive disorder, and things like that. Many of our people don't really have mental illnesses per se. They have unresolved ancestresses and ancestors that can be dealt with rather swiftly. So we provide these services. All the services to the community are free, and the only income we receive is through support through our publications and through contributions and so forth. We don't receive any government money, any corporate funding or anything like that. Everything is based on one hand, we give out the free ebook publications. For those who would like the softcover versions, they can purchase those. Those who make contributions because they support our work and see it as valuable, our products and services, then they make contributions as well. So if you want to participate in this fundraiser, it is tonight as well as tomorrow, trying to raise those funds to get to, the different cities and give out the free books wherever we can at every place that we go. Nhoma page, Achede page, and so forth. One last question, brother asked, could this info be used as a life coach? Yes, and what it really is, of course, when you have somebody who's an elderess in the culture, and there are different capacities within the culture. You have some people who are priests and priestesses, Okomfo in Akan culture, Obosomfo in Akan culture, Osofo in Akan culture. You have people who are Abusia Panyin, which is the head of a Matri clan, or male head, or Oba Panyin, the female head. You have kings, queen mothers. You have Achiame, spokespersons for the kings and queen mothers. You have different offices in society. People who are grandparents, who are elders, elderesses, who are spiritually cultivated. They are, quote-unquote, life coaches. They guide the person towards what we call bebra, or creating a good life, helping people maintain subai pa, or good character, so they can function in the world in a harmonious fashion. When we get off track, it is the role of the Nanasom, or the elders and elderesses to help us ritually get back on track, understand our cosmological position in creation, how we got off track, what we need to do ritually to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with our own nkra. That's life coaching, if you want to use that term in English, but it's based on our ancestral culture. When we have ancestral culture in place, then we are life coaches, and we can help people realign themselves with balance, with order, with equilibrium. All right. So, and then we also have, of course, our Sankofa Juma website, where we train individuals who are human service agents, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, community support workers, case managers, case workers, and so forth, on how to incorporate culture with the clients that they work with, whether they're foster children, people who are so-called mentally ill and so forth, there are ways to introduce culture. So we have a method, Afura, whole life interventions. We use our Akwamu whole life journal. They use that as a manual to help infuse culture into these situations to help people approach mental and behavioral health from a whole life perspective. Akwamu whole life journal is one of the books that you will find on our Homa page, which you can purchase. That particular book is only $8. And we also have the PDF version. So, yes, that information is used as a life coach, for that kind of terminology. Okay, and then another question is, how do I find out which abosom are assigned to me? Now, first and foremost, with regard to certain specific spiritual questions and identity and so forth, just like physically you would ask your parents and grandparents what took place when you were a child, when you were born, and things like that. It's the same thing with our ancestresses and ancestors. They know exactly who you are because you came from them. You were a colleague of theirs in the ancestral realm before you reincarnated through bebra, through reincarnation return. They know who you are, what group you're from. It's encoded within your crop, but you also have elders and eldresses, ancestresses and ancestors who know who you are, who can tell you tonight who you are. So this is why we talk about establishing an ancestral shrine. You also have the abosom who are connected to you. So when you deal with your nkra, and also when you deal with your Nanasom and Samafa, your ancestresses and ancestors, you can find directly from them. You can be reminded directly from them. But dealing with your nkra, that force in your head region, that is your personal abosom, male for males as well as female. So that divinity will show you exactly who you are and what your function is through communication with that divinity. That is our responsibility. So they've already showed you in different ways. They'll direct you to certain animal totems. They'll direct you to certain functions. They'll show you what your temperament is in comparison to someone else's. And then when you begin to study the culture, you read the documents and listen to the videos and things like that, you'll start discovering what you've been experiencing from the abosom ever since you were a child. You'll find out that the certain colors that you were connected to, the certain animals you were connected to, the certain temperament you have, the certain situations you are drawn to and repelled from. These are all indications of a specific divinity, that governs you. And then you'll start communicating more effectively with that divinity through working with your nkra, and you'll learn those details, Okay. And one question, are you ever coming to Florida to speak? Yes, we've had a number of people ask about Florida, so send us an email. Florida is one of the locations, one of the regions that we do want to go to this summer, hopefully in July. So all we have to do is just organize that, and it doesn't take a great deal of organization. Just send us an email at Akwamuman@odwirafo.com, AAKHUAMUMAN@odwirafo.com. Just go to the Odwirafo website and go to the contact us section, and we have a couple of email addresses there. But yes, we do want to come to Florida. We had a couple of people ask about that. So we just have to connect with the individuals and, see who wants to organize this. It can be a small event or a large event. It just depends on, the circumstances. But yes, we do plan to be in Florida. Okay. So, if there's no more questions, there's only 5 minutes left on the call, so we can end it here. And again, if you have any questions, just send us an email. You can also hit us up on our Afuraitkaitnit.ning.com site, our Ning site, which is our social network. It's our own privately owned social network. It's similar to Facebook, where you can have your own profile, post articles, post videos. There are many discussions on various aspects of the things we talked about tonight, as well as on the other shows and videos and books and publications and so forth. We always update everything on that page as soon as a new publication drops or there's a new event or our upcoming Blog Talk Radio programs and whatever it is, we always put the information out on the page immediately. We also have a Facebook group, Akan Nanasom on Facebook, so you can connect with us there. Finally, we have a number of shows. We have 8 shows. This will be the 9th show on Blog Talk. So you can listen to all of the archives. Most of the archives are between 2 and 3 hours of all the previous shows. And then this show, it'll probably be within the next 15 minutes. So it'll be archived and it'll be accessible. So you can, listen to this show as well as, and you can also share it. You can share it on Facebook, share it in your social network, share the link, with all your contacts. And the previous shows where we've hit a number of different subjects, and every week we're going to be going into detail about, new information, our publications, as well as new information we haven't published yet. All right, so, Yerase, we thank you for listening, tuning in, and our next broadcast will be next Apenada Tuesday for Ojira Purification. We will be doing part 2 to the program we did last night, talking about the origin of the terms Africa, Moor, nigger, Hebrew, Asiatic. All of these titles we give the proper definitions showing that we are Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, and we expose the accurate information about these other various foolish titles that have nothing to do with us. All right, so Yerase, we thank you, and we will talk again, and we'll meet again. So in Akan we say Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. Yerase.